The Business of Cleaning, the podcast that brings cleaning industry expertise straight to your ears. We interview professionals from all over to bring our listeners knowledge of how to achieve success within their business. Season 1 is about change management and enabling you to both face and create change in all aspects of your company. We're talking management, HR, suppliers, and more. Let's sweep right into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Cleaning podcast. My name is Haley Morris. I'm your podcast coordinator and host. And today with me, we're very fortunate to have Troy Hopkins. Troy is from Office Pride, and he's going to be talking to us about employee retention through our hiring and why it is so vital that we get on top of that. So, Troy, if you would like to tell us more about yourself and lead off, we'll go there.
Great. Thanks, Haley. Yeah, so I'm Troy with Office Pride. I'm actually a coach. I'm referred to as an area developer for Office Pride. And, we have myself around 27 owners in Alabama and Tennessee and the Carolinas that we coach and that I try to do my best to make successful. And I think the biggest challenge that you and I both talked about is employee retention is the biggest thing going now, because really we're really staffing companies that clean, if you think about it. So that's what I'll talk about. And hopefully that, people listening to this podcast can take away just a few bullets to maybe help their hiring process.
Yeah, so obviously this is, especially right now, it's a really large issue because we have kind of a revolving door, or it's at least frequently seen that we have a revolving door of people coming in and leaving. And maybe some people are aware and some are not. It's a huge cost to the company, and it can be morally taxing for everybody involved. What would you say then is probably one of the biggest causes of that revolving door?
Great question. I mean, on average, you see, turnover be as high as 400% in some companies, which is it's a disaster. And I think me personally, and I think it's going to sound harsher than I mean this to sound, but I think, employee turnover and retention is sometimes self-inflicted by the owner, because in this industry, sometimes we want to just think that employees can just be replaced. I hope they can last for 2 weeks and I'll get another employee, or they hope they work on a Friday night. And we don't pour into them, and we don't have a culture. I'm really kind of tired of hearing that we can't hire employees. There's no employees out there. We need to step back and say we can do this. We got to put a system in place and appreciate these employees. And that's what I want to talk about is just, my goal really in this podcast is for people to understand that you got to have a good first impression. First impression is everything. And then the second thing is the more time you spend in the hiring process, the higher your profits and less stress. A lot of people think I do a quick hire, get somebody clean, but if they'll take their time, and I'll kind of show you how to do a 6-step hiring process. If you walk through every steps, you'll have less stress, higher retention, and more profits. So you just jump right into that?
Yeah, let's go for it. I think
I think people's got to realize what poor performers actually bring to the table. I mean, they have fewer ideas. They lose sales volume because they perform poorly, so you lose customers. They really send a message to our customers that hey, your company's weak because they let you in, and the biggest thing for me, Haley, is if they're working for me and they're a bad performer, that means they can't go work for my competition. And that's what I wish they would do, is take those bad energies over to my competitors. So you got to make sure you need to be in control of your process. And unfortunately, we hire someone because they're the only person that can cover on a Friday night. So really that employee has got us handcuffed. And that handcuff is costing us a lot of money. And that's why we got to have, and I say have at least 10% of your population. So if you have 100 employees, you got to have 10% ready to go, ready to deploy at any time. And that's what we'll talk about, because the outrageous cost that you mentioned earlier, Haley, is it's loss of customers, recruitment costs, training costs, the ramp up curve for a new employee, lost productivity. So you can easily, if you lose 50 employees, least that could cost you around $50,000, and people don't put a dollar value to that. So we got to realize that one single toxic, a negative employee can be the catalyst to the down spiral organization. So it's like the weakest link. You know, if that's the best you can do in your hiring process, then that's the best quality that they can expect. So I think the number one thing to do is have a great first impression. And that's why, I mean, when you're in the janitorial business, I mean, I know there's a lot of companies that work from home, but you can't interview people at home. You can't, I mean, to me, going to McDonald's and interviewing people might not be the best first impression. So you got to have an office. You got to have a place to orientate, welcome people, and you got to set that expectation. I mean, when we have our hiring process, you know, we have snacks and coffee and water. We have maybe a video playing in the background of you know, our employees saying great things about our company. You know, we got to invest in that first impression. And what things I'll do is I'll make, you know how when you go out and give a bid for a company, you'll give a sales slick about your company, right? Well, what we like to do is do a sheet for that employee that's interviewing in our company, because we really got to sell to the employee, not them necessarily selling to us. So I'll make a brochure up that has, you know, company information about our vacations, holidays, growth potential, promotional opportunities, different committees and task force they can be on, bonus programs, if you have like an educational program for them. So I want to show them, if you come with office pride, this is what you're going to get, right? Again, that first impression. So let me tell you I'll summarize the 6 steps, and then I kind of want to go into it, Haley, unless you have some questions about those. And the first thing is you got to get the right application, you know, right? That's the number one thing. And I'll walk through these. But on day one, in which I usually do it on Monday, we do our pre-screening, our phone calls of these applications, right? On day 2, on a Tuesday, we do a meet and greet. We actually, the ones we want to bring in, we bring in, and we call it a meet and greet, where basically they're coming in, they're meeting some staff members. Maybe we have one of our day porters come by and talk about what they do. They fill out a questionnaire, and I'll go through that in a second. So basically, they're coming in, and what you'll see when I show you in a minute is the more time the employee comes to your office, you keep weeding out those people that won't come back the next day. So I hate to say it, but the people that are your bad performers, they won't go through the entire process. And you're just doing this just to see who comes back. So that meet and greet, I'll show you that in a second, the numbers on that. On day 3, we have a one-on-one interview. Day 4 is orientation. And then we present our hiring to our selected candidates. So before I dive in each one, any questions so far on kind of the importance of a process?
I was just going to say myself that you can see, I know from the HR perspective, whenever you bring up making that application process a little more difficult, and they always like, well, that's harsh, like to weed out the weaker links early. It says, well, do you want that person who you could have cut out of the process at a less costly stage to actually be brought into your company, and you have to cut them out after 30, 60, 90 days, or even so much longer, when they've already come in and kind of leached the good energy or spread a bad reputation, or, not actually measured up to what you thought in the interview process.
That's right, exactly, because it costs you so much more to get rid of somebody than it does to spend the time to do it right. So let me give you some numbers through my research I've done and from my experience. But there's what a lot of people do is a quick hire process. Let's say you need 6 employees. So people will interview 15 on the spot. They'll pick 6 of the best employees. They will invite them to an orientation. Okay, they'll orientate the same day. And then they'll ask them to come to work tonight. Of that 6 employees, Haley, you'll be shocked, but of 6, only 2 show up that night. So you hired them that day, interviewed them, orientated. They never left your office, right? That night, 2 of the 6. So only 33% show up. And of that 33%, only 17% stay. So that's terrible. I hear so many companies that say, you know what, if I need 10 employees, I don't hire at least 30 because only 10 is going to show up. And that's their mentality. You know what? Let me just hire the best 10 to show up, right? So let me walk you through what I say is the 5-step process. So let's say you need 6 employees. So you might get 45 applicants, and from those applicants, let's say you invite 30 people to come to the meet and greet, right? Of the 30 people, only 67% is going to show up that next day. And they all say they needed a job, right? So in the meet and greet, then let's say you find 15 that you really like, right? You actually, of the 15 that they got to have a job, I got to feed my kid, I'll be there every day. Of the 15, only 10 show up for the one-on-one interviews. The good news is my managers now are only interviewing people that are showing up. They're not waiting for all these vacant slots that never showed up. So again, only 67% showed up for the one-on-one interviews. So now, of those one-on-one interviews, those 10 people, right, we're going to bring 7 of them that I like to orientation. So the good news is about 86% now show up. So of the 7, 6 showed up that next day for orientation. So what we've done is we weeded out, and this is no cost. We don't pay for the interview process. At least we don't. They're coming in and going through this process. So now we're in orientation, and we have now 6 people in orientation. And now I want to start those 6 people tonight. Almost every time 100% shows up, they've already been through a 4-step process, right? So if you'll just spend the money, and I'll walk you through those, which is really interesting. Does that make sense? To me, it's kind of shocking when you're looking at people in the face that need a job desperately, and they don't even show up the next day. But here's the thing: is I'd rather them not show up for the interview than not show up when I got to clean a customer, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say. You've got your good employees, you've got your so-so, you've got your bad, and then you got the ones that are scheduled and the last minute, without even calling, they don't even show up. And those guys probably do the most damage because suddenly you have to fill a job with no time to spare.
Exactly. So I'll kind of walk you through those steps. The first thing is the application. I mean, to me, the best applications are referrals from other good employees. I mean, that's the first thing we do is when we have a job opening, we'll put a group message out through our electronic, management systems that say we have these 2 spots open. And if you got 100 employees, they know family and friends that will help. Then, of course, you do your Indeed, Craigslist, all that kind of thing. Facebook, social media, career centers. But also we'll actually have application box at the outside of our office doors. And because a lot of our demographics of employees might not have good internet service, or maybe they don't have a computer available to them at all times. And so, we'll have an application box outside the door that says, pick up application. And beside of it, we'll have a locked realtor box. And for them to put the application in, so we could get 20 or 30 applications a night. And this is on top of the electronic methods. So you got to really think out of the box when you get applications. And, Eric Chester said it the best. I love Eric Chester. He said, you always have got to be canvassing. Kind of the ABC is always be canvassing for employees. And so, when birds of a feather really kind of flock together, right? So good employees hang out together with other good employees. So, the cost of a bad hire can be up to 3 times our salary. So people don't understand that. I think it's hugely important. So once you get those applications, now you do phone screens. This is a simple little interview process over the phone to make sure they answer, the cell phone works and everything's going. And then you invite the candidates to the meet and greet. And so at the meet and greet, they got to have a reason for coming, right? And a lot of times if you're a small business and it's just you and nobody else in your company because you're just starting up, this is a great way for the meet and greet because you can actually bring people in, weed out the people that's not going to show up, the next day have the interview with them. So I think it's really important. But the questionnaire could be, they might just fill out things to make sure they show up and give them something required to do. Maybe they watch a video, for example. But the questionnaire could be, how do you hear about us? What area do you want to work in? What shifts? What's your time preference? And all kinds of things that you might need in the future. And I take the questionnaire with their application, which already have or they've completed, and then I let them go home. Hey, you know, I think the biggest thing is if you tell them on the spot, come in tomorrow for the interview, it's great. The problem is though, I want to let them go home. I want to see if they'll answer their phone again, you know, and call them back up and say, I'd like to interview you tomorrow at 2 o'clock, 2:15. I give them an exact time. The meet and greet was a walk-in, like a, you know, 2 to 4 p.m. So the interview process, the biggest thing is you as the interviewer have got to convince yourself that you love the company. So if I have a manager that when he or she is interviewing and they're like, yeah, can you work Friday night? I mean, the place is really tough, but I mean, hopefully, you know, if they're negative, right? Then the interviewee is not going to want to join us. You got to make sure that the person interviewing has great questions, is excited about this industry, and that will obviously come right over to the employees. So once you interview them, we then on the spot, it's almost like American Idol. You know, you get the golden ticket. So once they get them to interview, if we like them and think they should go to the orientation, we'll actually give them a ticket that says orientation is tomorrow at, 5 o'clock, please be here on time kind of thing, right? So, they walk out feeling like, wow, I did it. I got information about the time of orientation, and they come in the next day. Like I said, 87% show up because you walk through a process. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm thinking about, like, I've gone through this process with people before. I've run like orientations and brought people on and things like that. The meetup is the very interesting part because I don't think I've seen anybody who does that, but it's such a good point because, we'd run orientations and we'd do the interview where we'd offer them on the spot. If they were good, we'd do the phone screen. We just kind of skipped that meetup stage. And then what you would see is usually we'd have a class of anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8 people, and a couple of them would fall off. And it was always kind of like a random number where you always count on a couple of them falling off. The bigger the class, the more likely you were to have more people. Mm-hmm. I was shocked. I had a class of 17 once. And we were kind of counting on the fact that a couple wouldn't show up because we were a little short on onboarding computers. But we got everybody in. It worked best for everybody that we didn't want to reschedule people because, most of the class was very excited even before we interviewed them. All 17 showed up, and it was like the most like, whoa moment. Right. And then I think we only lost 1 or 2 because it was a 2-day orientation. So you would lose more people oftentimes before the second day too. And I think only 1 or 2 ended up not being able to make the second day, which if you're paying for orientation, which you should be, yes, that they're working for you at that point, then, having somebody come in for 1 day, make money, or come in for 2 days, do both orientations and make money, and then dip out on you once you've done some training and introduction, you still have to pay them for that time. So that can be costly for sure.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And some people call it discovery day, different things, but when people come in, in this industry, if you're out really selling and doing what you should be doing in commercial cleaning, you always need employees, right? So if you orientate or discovery day, however you'll say it, the new employee, then let's say, for example, 7 show up and go through, but you only need to hire really 3 people. Let's say that you got 3 open spots. Well, here's the thing is, those other 4 needs to go into what I call the queue. You should have at least 10% of your population always available. I have folders on my desk this is part-time day, part-time night, full-time, weekend. You have your different categories. So when Sue that works on Saturday calls in and quits, I can pull the folder out and immediately call Tim. Tim, I have a position for you. Right? So it based on what state you're in and different rules and laws in different states, you can actually have a discovery day instead of orientation, and then when you make the hire, bring them in the next day and do your I-9s and all your, the important paperwork. So you could have another step in the process. But, the biggest thing is people, they want to go to somewhere that they really appreciate, that knows they can have promotional opportunities. They can move up to supervisor or operations manager or quality inspector. So you've got to do things that's going to attract the employees because they all have lives just like everybody else does, right? And we got to show them that this is a career, and don't let pay stand in the way, because you can't pay. Obviously, nobody in this industry pays minimum wage, because I hate to say it. Well, one person told me the other day is I couldn't even get somebody to play dead for minimum wage, right? Because it's just not going to happen. You got to pay more than the industry average, and you got to reward them with bonus, quality incentives, different things, to do. Couple things, a couple more tips is you got to invest in that good orientation and training. Obviously, you got to put the money up front. If not, it's going to cost you a lot more in the end. On average, the employee decides in the first few minutes of meeting you if they can really be there next 2 weeks. So the first impression is a key, and you gotta do that. You gotta have a good employee handbook, right? You gotta have a handbook that has all the rules, regulations, and policies in it. People's got to have a guide to what they are really important to or supposed to do. But also, you got to have tracking procedures. And this is where someone's got to really have a good electronic system to manage their processes, their disciplines, recognitions, job performance reviews. I mean, you need to give the employees performance reviews. And a lot of people in our industry just kind of work from paper and pen, right? They just kind of write things down. But you got to have a process, because you got to track your quality, through quality inspections, and tie that to the employee, right? So you can see if you're having bad quality in 3 accounts, and just so happen the same person's cleaning all 3 accounts. Excuse me. You got to have a tracking system for that. So you got to invest in an infrastructure to do that. And the biggest thing is consistency. You got to treat people fairly and consistent. Don't take the ones you like and treat them differently than the ones you don't like. You gotta treat everyone consistent. And a couple things, Haley, that I've found, the one way to really help retention is the employees after 2 weeks of being on board. You should do a 2-week survey with them. Have somebody from the office call them up, not the person who interviewed them necessarily, and say, "Hey, Tina, how was your first 2 weeks? Did you get a good training? Did you get all the supplies and tools you need? I mean, any feedback you have on our onboarding process?" And what happens is you'll get all kinds of really good information about something maybe that didn't go right in your process. Or better yet, Tina might say, "You know what, Troy, I'm glad you called, because I'm getting ready to quit because I've got to have 5 more hours, or I've got to take this other job." In other words, you might learn information to retain those employees, right? So do a 2-week survey, and always provide. And we tell people in orientation that we'll give you constructive feedback all the time, right? Even on a monthly basis. So when we do our quality checks, we'll let you know, do you do a great job or you have some opportunities? So I think the 2-week survey is a game changer. Also, another tip that I do is to me, your employees are your recruiters. If you have 100 employees, in my opinion, you have 100 recruiters out there. So we'll make up business cards, and it'll have their name on it, and it will have the address of the office and the phone number, and it might have "join our team," right? So we'll give these employees, maybe key leaders or supervisors, these business cards. And as they're out, having their car in the car wash or going to Walmart, they see somebody really working hard and really doing great customer service. They'll say, "Listen, why don't you come and interview with us," right? And our employees, some of them have never had a chance to have a business card. To have a business card with their name on it, tied back to your office, and they're just passing them out to future, employees. I've met a company that had a 300-person staff, and they 100% did all their hiring through giving business cards to employees. Again, it don't have their personal information on it or their cell phone. It just has your office information. So another good tip. And so I'll try those things. And I guess that's kind of wrapping up, my thoughts in this podcast is you got to treat people with respect. You got to show them the opportunities in your company that's there for them. And so I think the stigma of there's no employees out there, they're all bad, it's just because it's a mentality thing. We're self-inflicted this on us. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I would agree. And I'd say too to that, like you get back what you put out. So if you're putting out that these guys aren't doing good or that these guys can't do good, it's going to, I forget what that theory is called, but they're going to feel that and they're going to become what you think they are,
Exactly.
or they're going
Exactly.
to walk away before they let themselves get to that point. So you have to kind of believe in people before you get them in, and then you have to have that process to vet them. And if they're committed and they're good and they meet all your qualifications, they'll make it through if they're able.
Exactly.
So, and those are the people that you keep for years and years and years. And those are the
Yeah.
people that are happily handing out those business cards because, hey, I really like where I work.
Yeah.
So,
And I have a name on a card. This is perfect.
mm-hmm. And then I'd say the last thing that I always did that when I was a recruiter and I interviewed people was I would actually just be upfront and honest about some of the tedious parts of the job. You know, I talked to them about the kind of people that worked for us and how they interacted and things like that. And I'd say, you know, why this job, like the crowd that this job is popular amongst is, and that particular one was, it was for like high school students and retirees because the nature of it was very, very systematic, scripted. It didn't have any free thinking to it except for your tone and how you conveyed. And I would just be upfront with people during the interview process and I would say, you know, it's it is what it is, but it can be really fun. Like your coworkers make it fun. You do get breaks and the benefits are here are really great. There's easy snacks and things like that.
Yeah.
We did an activity book for when things were boring for people. We crafted that every single month by hand, and then printed it out. So I found that I don't know how my coworkers were doing it, in regards to how they described the job, but I found that a lot of the people I offered, if they accepted at that point, tended to show up to orientation.
Yeah.
Um, I was also one of those people, I love to vet a little more, to really look for like the tone and the attitude and the kind of commitment to it, to see would they actually want to stay? Can they deal
Yeah.
with maybe some boring moments? If they get to talk to their coworkers, can they be
Yeah.
optimistic on, you know, their fifth call for, you know, in 10 minutes? So,
Exactly. That's some good tips.
mm-hmm. And it works, you know, and sometimes you had a gold mine with a person who comes in, they're bubbling, you're like, you are going to light up the office, and then they'll be contagious. And, you know, not everybody's going to be the big bubbly personality, but you want everybody to bring something positive and influential in a good way to the space.
Good. Perfect. I love it.
All
Well,
right.
I appreciate you letting me be on your podcast today.
Mhm. Thank you for coming on, Troy. It's been very good to have you. And I think this is a really great time to introduce this topic on the show, coming into fall, and, you know, kids are going back to school. So parent situations are changing and work is going to have to kind of maybe shift for them.
Exactly.
So, yeah, with rolling into the cooler season and everything else. And I think recruitment tends to slow a little bit about this time too, or at least the number of applicants for us sometimes slows as it gets colder. People tend to have their job or not be as wanting to search outside of a certain zone
Yeah.
with possible snow on the horizon or whatever else it is.
Perfect.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and we'll finish up right here. Thank you everyone for tuning in to the business of cleaning. And I can't wait to talk to you next week. But also don't forget to subscribe and leave a review because I love hearing from people like Troy, but I also love hearing from you. Thank you.